black London taxi is an icon. It's essential to the character of the city as red double-decker buses and Big Ben. But the start-stop of driving a taxi around a city is not very good for fossil fuel engines, so electric taxis are an absolute no-brainer. LEVC has been offering this electric alternative called the TX since 2017, and they've now sold over 8,500 of them globally. Now they've got a new version with a slightly bigger battery and a greater motor efficiency, so we thought we'd take it for a spin, but we ain't going south of the river, mate. Not this time of night. Before we get to the details though, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The first thing we should mention about the TX is it's not a pure battery EV. We don't normally review cars with petrol engines, but we made an exception with the TX because it's a range extender and you're meant to use it mostly or even entirely on battery. The petrol engine is a turbocharged 1.5 litre 82 PS 3-cylinder unit from Volvo. Oh, did I mention that LEVC is owned by Geely, that also owns Volvo. That petrol motor never drives the wheels directly, however. Those are always driven by an electric motor at the back axle. That's a similar system to the original BMW i3 Rex. Basically what happens is when your battery gets to a certain level, the petrol engine will kick in and actually act as a generator. It will top up the battery. So you are basically still running an electric motor powered by the battery, but it's coming from, the energy is coming from the petrol engine through the battery. That's not as green as it could be, but it does have some advantages. The new TX doesn't look a lot different to the old one, or indeed generations of black cabs that went before it. That's more a benefit than a disappointment. People want to hail a black cab that looks like a black cab, just like we don't want Big Ben to go digital. The TX has a direct heritage going all the way back to the classic LTI vehicles of many decades beforehand. In fact, this is the only vehicle specifically designed to be a taxi, rather than converted from another vehicle. Its heritage goes back over 100 years to 1908. This is a big chunky car, but it's extremely easy for passengers to get in the back because that's what it was designed for. More on that later. The main thing about this new one is the battery is a little bit bigger. It goes from 31 kilowatt hours to 34.6 kilowatt hours, and that means that the electric range has gone to 78 miles from 64 miles. There are two basic trim levels, Icon and Vista. You can add a Comfort Pack and a Comfort Pack Plus to the Vista. Believe it or not, there are colours available other than black, including blue, white, dark blue, pearlescent black, grey and a pearlescent red. But you don't buy a black cab so you can get a red one. So let's have a look inside this black beauty. This driver's seat is comfortable enough, which is probably what you want when you're going to be sitting in it doing your work for 7+ hours a day. If you're a Volvo owner or driver, you'll probably recognise a lot of this switchgear, which does actually come from Volvo, part of the Geely group. From the driver's seat, all-round visibility is excellent. This isn't exactly a luxury space, but it does appear to be built to last. You'll notice there is no passenger seat. Instead, this space can be used for luggage. Of course, the front of a cab is also the driver's office, and there are plenty of features to help with that. There's this robust cup holder, which looks like it's on a sliding kind of a rail here, but actually this rail is designed for you to be able to add other things, like, for example, you could put an iPad mount here, or some kind of payment system could be mounted on here as well. See, there's a small cubby here with a 12-volt supply and a USB port and an audio input. This might look like a wireless phone charger, but it's actually a wireless charger for the key, and unfortunately there is no wireless phone charger option with this vehicle. Seems like a bit of an omission, frankly. The taxi meter would go up here, wired into the light on the top. They gave us the car, but they wouldn't give us a license. The meter would come from the taxi company though, not LEVC directly. There's a button here for the interior intercom, because you can't open the clear plastic partition. It just has a slot for cash payments. The intercom works adequately well, even on motorways. Overall, this is a nice enough space to spend a day's driving work in. Of course, black cabs are all about the passenger experience. So let's get in the back and see what that's like. First thing to point out is that you can virtually stand up in the side of a black cab like this one. So there's plenty of space. This is enormous and cavernous in here. All versions of this cab have 3 back seats, and now these are pretty comfortable. You can sit in the middle on the back, and it's actually more comfortable than most cars that you'd get into. Maybe a little bit more cramped here, but still not too bad. 3 people, not an issue. But one of the key things about a black cab is that you can have more than 3 passengers. So you get this seat here, and this seat here. Now you only get 5 seats with the Icon version of this car, but all the other versions have an extra seat. So you actually get 6 seats. There's something special about this seat. If you pull this thing here at the back, you can actually angle this out. So then, if I'm sitting on here, I can actually go inside like this, which means that if I am actually a person with a disability, it's very easy for me to get into this cab. But what if you're a permanent wheelchair user? So that's where this feature comes in. Now this is an optional extra that costs £840 for the basic car. Now if I pull this yellow thing and then pull this out, it's actually not too hard to do. Got this. You can see that then in just a few seconds I've created a ramp. That's £840 on the basic car, comes as standard on all the others. Believe me, that £840 will actually save you money, because having a wheelchair ramp like this is a requirement to get the plug-in taxi grant. There's also a harness underneath here for securing a wheelchair in place. These points here, and there's two more at the front, are where you'd actually fit that harness. And you'll notice that you have vomit resistant wipe clean flooring as well. And putting this ramp away doesn't take very long either. That's kind of what you want when time is money. Here on one of the doors you've got a panel that gives you interior controls of the air conditioning, and there's also another intercom button that's there so that passengers can initiate a conversation with the driver rather than vice versa. So you can see it has these separate vents, so you can actually control the air conditioning separately to the driver. And just above the intercom speaker you'll notice there is this strangely positioned USB port. That's for putting a USB Wi-Fi dongle to provide Wi-Fi connectivity for your cab passengers. There's also these USB ports, there's one on each side for the passengers to charge their phones. There's also a 13 amp 240 volt power connection if you want to charge a laptop if you're coming back from the airport or something. Of course you've got ISOFIX points for children's car seats as well. It's also worth mentioning that you can hook the intercom system into a hearing aid using the T channel. Allegedly you can also mount some kind of payment system over here, although I can't quite work out where that would go. Surprisingly, you actually get a sunroof on the Vista Comfort and Comfort Plus. We don't know why taxis don't have this kind of feature before, because it's really great to be able to see the city as you drive around. So overall, these rear seats are perfectly comfortable for an hour. I think if you spend a long time on a motorway, which we have tested, they're not so comfortable. Definitely on an airport run you want to be facing forwards rather than backwards. Those other seats, perfectly okay, but only for shorter journeys. Now there's not a lot of luggage space in the back of this taxi, just enough for a spare wheel and your charging cable. But you're not really supposed to be using this for your luggage. That's because this is actually supposed to be where passengers put their luggage. This is enough for 440 litres of luggage. We put two large suitcases facing this way up in here, and it's perfectly fine. That's quite a decent amount of storage. For comparison, the average hatchback has maybe 300 to 400, so it's more than that. But of course, don't forget, you have all this space inside the car as well to put luggage. I actually took my son back to university in this vehicle, and his mother as well, and there's plenty of space for all that stuff and a couple of passengers too. It's also worth remembering that there's a full van version of this car called the VN5, where all of this rear section is for cargo, and that's enough for 5,500 litres of stuff in the back. So that 34.6 kilowatt hour battery is enough for a WLTP 78 miles of range, but of course you've also got a 36 litre petrol tank that will give you 255 miles on top of that. A typical black cab day will exceed the 78 mile battery range of the TX, but there are street chargers all over London that are exclusively for taxi use. So the idea is that you can charge it up on your lunch break and do the whole day without petrol motor at all. So that petrol motor is really only there if somebody at the last minute says, can we do a run to standstill or something like that? And you're probably going to want to avoid using it anyway, because this car only does 32.2 miles per gallon on the petrol engine, which isn't that great. Compared to the cost per mile of using overnight cheap energy, it's going to be a lot more expensive, and even some public chargers will come in cheaper than using petrol. So the charging port at the front here, which seems to be always open even when the car's locked, which is a bit of a design fault, gives you CCS charger. There's also an optional CHAdeMO connector on the side here. So if you want to make use of a charger that has that type of connection, it's available. You've got 50 kilowatt DC, and then you've got up to 22 kilowatt AC. This car only has 11 kilowatts. LEVC doesn't talk about how long it takes to charge up this car, but from our experience it'll take you well under an hour to top up on a DC charger, probably 1.5 hours on 22 kilowatts, maybe 3 hours on 11 kilowatts and kind of 4.5 on 7. So that means that if you charge it overnight before you go to work, it won't be a problem. You'll be able to use most overnight free cheap charging tariffs. I was on a run up the M1 and I charged from 8% to 93% in the time it took me to go buy a fast food meal and eat it. This isn't the most economical of EVs though. I estimate that it was doing slightly under 2 miles per kilowatt hour. So you're going to be still with a low cost overnight tariff, you're still going to be using just 4p a mile, which is pretty decent and much better than the over 25p a mile that you're probably going to be spending if you use petrol to power this thing. However, that does mean that the economic viability of this vehicle hinges on whether or not you have cheap overnight charging to do the majority of your miles on. If you've been in a recent Volvo XC90, you'll find this steering wheel rather familiar because it's straight out of that parts bin. On the left, you've got controls for the cruise control, which is a regular non-adaptive variety, so it just kind of maintains your speed. On the right, these are multimedia controls, switching tracks, volume up and down, muting. There are traditional stalks for lights and indicators on the left and for windscreen wipers on the right. So you turn this vehicle on by twisting this knob, and that you'll hear a slight buzz and makes a lot of weird noises, frankly, when you do that. Then you've got this gear stick. You pull this backwards to go for drive and neutral, and then forwards for reverse, and then left and right decreases or increases the regeneration. There's no specific park button, so you use this park brake here to put it in park mode, and there's auto hold as well, which is kind of handy for a taxi. While you do have buttons for the demisting of the windows, all the other air conditioning functions go via the LCD panel. The dashboard display is a digital screen, but it mimics an analog display. So you've got the various levels of, got the petrol level and the battery level on the left with an actual indication of how much that equates to here. This is just a speedo and also tells you what gear you're in. And finally, on the right, it gives you charge, regen, and also tells you, the one on the bottom tells you what your regen mode is. So this brings us back to this 9-inch portrait infotainment screen, which also has Volvo vibes about its interface. If this vehicle has an Achilles heel, it's that the infotainment system feels like a throwback to 10 years ago. The sat-nav is frustrating to enter addresses into, but presumably around London the driver will have memorised all the streets through the knowledge. Unfortunately, when we were driving, it didn't support live traffic, but that is apparently a function if you go through the settings. One particularly frustrating feature is that although you can actually connect a phone, it doesn't support CarPlay or Android Auto, so you can't replace the maps with your own phone. So you can see that you have these main functions. You've got the radio here, that was the sat-nav up here. You get some more functions if you drag this down here. This is different things. You can change what that's showing. This is currently showing that I'm doing 0 miles per gallon, which is very economical. Now, one thing is you can actually swipe left and right to get different functions. So, for example, you can see here the camera, go back to there, and also the drive mode. So you will normally be driving in smart mode. Save mode means that you actually only drive on petrol engine if you wanted to actually conserve the battery power. And then when you're in town and you only want to use battery power, because the petrol engine will cut in occasionally if you accelerate hard, the pure EV mode will prevent that from happening. And obviously if you go the other way, you get, just turn the radio, you can see things like car status, and this is not a particularly great interface to show you how many miles per gallon you've been doing and the efficiency of your electrical functions. Overall, this is probably the weakest part of the car. We do rather wish that they'd taken a more recent part from the Volvo bin to do the infotainment system, because in our opinion, although you don't necessarily need that if you know your way around London, having quite a rudimentary system here is a bit of a drawback. We also think the absence of wireless CarPlay with a charger attached is a real omission, because you want to sit in here and just plonk your phone down and maybe receive texts and things from your business and have them really easily to access on the screen. So that's a major function that's missing from this car. But a taxi is all about driving and taking passengers around. So let's go for a drive. The motor driving the rear wheels has 148 horsepower, but this is a heavy car with a 2,230 kilogram curb weight, so it takes a sedate 12.8 seconds to hit 60 miles per hour. But passengers won't want Tesla levels of acceleration anyway. It feels rapid enough for city driving because being electric, the torque is immediate. A black cab is not meant to be a driver's car. It's about passenger comfort. After all, you want the passengers to have a happy journey and give you a big tip. This is a smooth drive with wheels and tyres designed to maximise comfort over looks. The TX does feel surprisingly stable at motorway speeds, although you're not going to be going much faster than 70 miles an hour because the maximum is 80. Having completed a round-trip journey from London to Nottingham, I can tell you that this is not a car that you want to do a multi-hour motorway journey in. It gets a bit tiring for both driver and passengers. Urban roads are this car's natural home. With rear-wheel drive only, the steering is light and the car feels very manoeuvrable despite its size. Then of course there's the legendary black cab turning circle. This car can really go around in a complete U-turn right in the middle of the street. In terms of safety, the LEVC TX has plenty of airbags to keep the driver and passengers safe. All of its advanced driver assistance systems come as standard too. These include road sign information and lane departure warning. There's forward collision warning and autonomous emergency braking. You also get acoustic alerts at low speed to warn pedestrians and cyclists of your approach. But there's no blind spot detection or adaptive cruise control. However, you're not going to make much use of the latter when travelling around urban streets at 5 miles per hour anyway. Commercial vehicles are never cheap and black cabs are notoriously expensive. As I've already said, ironically, the basic Icon trim version is almost the most expensive because it doesn't qualify for the plug-in taxi grant. Without that grant, the Icon starts at £66,500. But if you add in that £840 wheelchair ramp, you then get the £7,500 grant. That drops the price under £60,000. Next up we have the Vista, which starts at £63,000. The Comfort Pack takes that to over £65,000, and the Comfort Plus Pack takes it to nearly £67,000. Those are on the road pricing, including all additional fees. You could buy a serious consumer grade EV for that kind of money, but it won't have the passenger capabilities of the TX. This car is unique. The service interval is 1 year or 25,000 miles, so it's easy to keep regularly maintained. The warranty is reassuring. The standard option is 3 years or 120,000 miles, and that includes the drivetrain. You can pay to boost that warranty up to 5 years or 150,000 miles. The battery guarantee, however, seems a bit behind consumer grade cars at just 5 years, but that is for unlimited miles. However, LEVC doesn't specify a capacity limit for that warranty. Although this car does have decent all-round visibility, there's also a perfectly adequate reversing camera so you don't run over somebody's cat when you're doing a 3-point turn. With WhichEV being a battery electric vehicle only title, you're probably expecting us to say, well, why wasn't this a battery electric only taxi? But with the TX, most of the time, it can be. It's also true to say that if you can't find a charger that works and your job depends on it, that could really hit your bottom line, and that's not a problem that you will have with the TX. This new version with 22% extra all-electric driving means you could drive all day, and that means a lot more benefit for the city environment. The time will come when black cabs are fully battery electric vehicles, and a lot of Uber drivers are already driving those. But for now, the TX is a great transitional vehicle. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Right, I'm off to go and pick up somebody from the Dorchester because I've got to supplement my income because WhichEV doesn't pay me enough, but I ain't going south the river, not at this time of night.